2 minutes till.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Glad to see you.
We'll be starting in a few minutes as soon as we get more of the people off the waiting room and into the webinar session.
So if you're just joining us, welcome. We're glad that you're here. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Just waiting for the rest of the participants to arrive.
When the gang is all here, or mostly here, we will start.
Yeah, make sure that you're muted. We'll have opportunities where you'll get to unmute and talk or ask questions, but just not yet.
Though feel free to ask questions or comment in chat.
Exactly.
It's 1 o'clock. Maybe we can give 1 more minute.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. And we'll bring other people on board as they come. So welcome to our webinar, Leave No One Behind, How to Lead a Hybrid Congregation. I am your host, Ken Howard, and also with us are Mary Francis and Steve Matthews. So here's what we'll be up to today. Our agenda is starting with an introduction and overview, basically looking at where are we now and where are we going. This next phase of it will be You Can't Go Home Again, Gains and Losses, and then considerations in leading a hybrid congregation, and then finally some Q&A and closure. And then we will also be having discussion times after some of the sessions that we're in. So let's just start with that first question. Where are we and where are we going? Well, one of the researchers, a researcher by the name of Scott Thuma from Faith Communities Today, did a kind of a literature review, a research review, and he said that he saw 4 different phases of findings coming out about where congregations were with respect to their operations during the COVID pandemic. He said March, everybody was lost and reactive. They're anxious, unprepared, unsure of the technology, doing their best, expecting lower giving, and getting lower giving. April, it kind of turned a bit, and there was, he called this the hardship and hopeful stage. hardship but hopeful stage, more confident, more creative, people getting better with the tech, trending upward in worship participation and giving, and beginning to form this idea that someday we can go back to normal. Then in May, he said it kind of turned to what he called one of two states. One is resilient stability, and the other is expecting resurrection. Resilience and adaptation, mostly a mainline response, and hunkering down, a response in the mainline, and kind of toughing it out. And then aggressive reopening was the other one. That's the expecting resurrection. And also, that was what was more with the evangelical set. Giving began rebounding, and people began to go on with their thinking about getting back to normal and thinking, well, this will soon be over. Well, it wasn't. And then in June, July, and August, we hit a period of exhaustion and uncertainty, with 1/3 of evangelical congregations opening and spiking, 2/3 uncertain of when they would reopen again, and 2/3 of congregants afraid to go back, and the leaders exhausted, and the thinking kind of shifted from this will be over soon to we're never going back to normal. We'd like to suggest that there's a fourth step coming, and some of you may be sliding into it already, and that is exploring new paradigms, letting go of the old normal, and doing what we call vision-guided experimentation towards the new normal, or normals, because it may be a different normal for various ones of us. So where are we? Among Protestant congregations, and this is from Lifeway Research, which is the evangelical research group. And so it's probably, when they say Protestant, they're probably thinking more Protestant evangelical. So this will be overstated a bit from where you are. But by late March, everybody was closed. By late April, almost all stayed closed. By late May, 42% have reopened, in quotes, which means in some kind of reopening, but with fewer seats, social distancing, no choir, all that. And then in mid-July, 72% had reopened, quote unquote. So that's where we are now, in beginning to come past that point of having reopened. And here's what's happening if you follow the trend forward from here. By late July, we'll have about 2/3 congregations open in some form. And then it just goes back down with people closing over the next several months until by early January, 2/3 will be closed again. And some thoughts here about what it's doing to outreach plans. So 1/3 of congregations have adapted to a hybrid model of congregational outreach, partly online, partly in person. But when you look at how and why people are doing this and their attitude around why they're doing it, 1/3 have adapted. They're leaning into this hybrid model and trying to get all they can out of both what they can do in person and what they can do online. But another third viewing it as a temporary suspension, that we'll be over this and we'll get back to the same old. And a third, indefinite suspension of in-person meeting. So just a food for thought, you might be wanting to think of what third are you in? Just mull that over. And then looking at online activities specifically, most congregations view online worship and education and small group activities as a stopgap measure, not something that they're leaning into, but something that they can abandon when they can return to their buildings. And you can see that in this chart. Where we are at now is a 5-fold increase in online worship and online small groups. But by late this year, we'll have a fourfold decrease, and it'll only be a 10% more using using online worship in small groups than were when the pandemic started. And here's been a big issue, no online communion. Half of the mainline churches have paused communion for the duration of the pandemic. 49% have paused, 29% of the mainline. And here's an interesting fact is that kind of goes towards the not leading into it or just thinking of this as something transitory. A third of the mainline folks, mainline congregations, are providing instructions for communion at home versus 28 of non-mainline. So that's a quick overview of where we are and where we're going. And we'd like to break you into groups of two for about 5 minutes for you to discuss these two questions. One is, how has COVID changed your congregation and your relationship with your neighborhood? And two, in what ways is your congregation leaning into its necessary adaptations, and in what ways is it holding back? So Steve is going to put you into small groups for the next 5 minutes.
Hang on just 1 second. I was going to do it randomly, but we've got a couple people on iPhones who are not able to break out. Give me just a second.
All right.
I think that's it. All right. 2 minutes, right, Ken?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. All right.
Although they can come back when they think they're done.
Okay.
Where's the...
You should be getting a pop-up on your screen asking you to accept the small group that you're being placed into.
You want to make sure to accept the invitation to join the breakout room. Looks like a lot of you are still here.
I was gone and I accepted, and I was gone in a room by myself.
Oh, well, let's fix
Okay.
that.
Steve, can you fix that?
Yes.
Thanks.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
I'm Reverend Adrian from Panama, and I would like to enter to the meeting.
Okay,
I
great.
don't know how.
Steve will take care of it. He'll put you in a breakout room.
Thank you.
Yes, still have people joining too, so.
Okay. We still have 3 minutes left.
Damien, did you get an invite to a room?
No, I did not. I'm waiting.
I did send one. I'm sorry. I'll try again.
You can try minimizing your screen. Sometimes it pops up behind it.
Oh,
It says
okay.
breakout room 20. But Mary, I'm going to move you in that room. There is an odd number. Well, let's see.
Well, why don't you just put
But-
Damien in another room?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Again, if you did not see the pop-up, you may want to minimize your screen and see if it had popped up behind there.
I have an option to leave, but that's it. There's nothing else.
That's what's strange.
You're a small little group over on the side, which is minimized. I have, it's okay.
Well, do you want to tell us, talk about the questions there?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I'm on the digital ministry committee for St. James the Apostle in Tempe, Arizona. And so I'm here as part of a cohort from that ministry. And essentially what we did under the direction of our new bishop was we closed down, and you went through all of that. Where are we now? We have spent a significant amount of money and submitted a grant to United Thank Offering for about $25,000 to really bring in the rural parishes and the current parishes to be able to record, because we anticipate, and our bishop anticipates, that this is a more long-term situation than anybody would care to believe.
Absolutely.
And so that has been the perspective. I myself have created, I live on Zoom because I'm also a professor of medicine. So I teach in school. Everything is on Zoom. So my events at church are centering prayer. We are doing a agape meal, which is a quasi communion service for people who are really missing it too much. And we do Taizé. And those are the 3 events that I am pretty much in charge of. And that's it.
Nice. That sounds good. So you're really leaning into your adaptations, it sounds like.
We are, of course, our people are getting, I should also say, I attend occasionally for morning mass. I just go to a Roman Catholic church. And in Arizona, that reopened. Now, they did every other pew. They marked it off. You wear masks. There's no holy water. It is a very kind of contained situation. I wondered while you were talking what the statistics were in the Roman Catholic Arizona, Phoenix Diocese, if there were actually any cases linked to being back in church. I'm not aware of any. But that is the way they were doing it. And so the Episcopalians are wondering, the Roman Catholics are kind of doing, what are we doing? You understand my point of view, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're hearing that in the Lutheran Church as well, and other denominations. Pretty much anyone who has a Catholic church in their town, if your church is still closed, people are going, but what about the Catholics?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
I want to say, I just want to say, I really appreciate the hard work that's gone in this and that you're doing this, because it's really very much needed.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
We are trying to be responsive and supportive of
Right.
faith communities. It's a hard time for everyone.
It is.
All right, do we invite people back?
Yep, they're coming back 10 seconds.
Okay, great.
Steve, let me know when you think that we've got everybody back in the room.
I think we're there.
Mhm.
So I hope that was okay for everybody. We had a little bit of technical difficulties getting everybody into small groups, but there will also be some time at the end for questions, and there'll be another small group breakout. And please feel free to put questions into the chat. So moving from where we are now, where we've been and where we are now, just want to lean into how do you lead a hybrid congregation? Because what we're all slowly beginning to realize is this COVID thing with our being in this hybrid space is going to be a lot longer than we think. And no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to fully go back into our buildings. And with the second wave, we might even be having more churches going back to being closed. So beginning to think of this as something we need to lean into, how do you lead? So first is do your homework. Congregational research, community research, talk to your colleagues. We're not in a situation where there are any experts right now. We're not even experts. We think of ourselves as wise guides, but you need to begin to think of new ways. So what you need to do is get back to why. We have to let go of what we've been doing, not necessarily abandoning it forever, but letting go of that, and then begin to experiment, trying to find new what's in service of the why. And we also may be finding that as we do our research and do our experimentation, and we might be finding that God is actually calling us to new and different whys. So food for thought for everybody while we're moving through this is think about what it is your why now, and has it changed, or how do you see it changing? So mull that over. So the first thing you have to do is ground yourself in research. Unfortunately, it's kind of sparse out there. There are a few people out there mostly doing research in their own kind of silos for their own purposes. Barna, Lifeway Research, Pew Research. We're curating a lot of research, and we are actually looking at doing some of our own research because most of it is in silos, and we're trying to look at the totality of what's going on in congregations. So you may know of more that we don't know of yet, and if you do, feel free to write them in our chat. And by the way, you will be getting the video for this. And you'll be getting all of the links and worksheets and whatnot in a downloadable handout after the workshop. So also get to know your congregation. So where were we pre-COVID? This is typical according to the folks at Pew, where most of us were pre-COVID is our congregations were largely Boomer and Gen X, some millennials and Gen Y, and a few people who are from the greatest and silent generation. And most of us had few non-members and few people who were not churched, unchurched, or dechurched. Where are we now? Well, we're getting more of the greatest and silent generation, people who are shut-ins, who can't make their way to church, but then can come online, people who are in nursing homes, continuing care. In some cases, people who were members of your church moved away, or family members of your church who've moved to Florida or some warm place like that. But we're also seeing more millennials and Gen Z in our online space, because more of those are predisposed to online worship and less to actually being in church. And then, of course, we're seeing a lot more non-members and unchurched, which is beginning to make us understand that our online presence is actually a way into the church, an evangelical opportunity, an evangelism opportunity. Then you also need to get to know your neighborhood. We can help you with this. This is one of the things we do. This is called a Neighborhood Missional Intelligence Report, and we ran it for a place in Bethesda, Maryland. And odds are you're going to, no, excuse me, this is for Gaithersburg, Maryland. And odds are this is going to be typical of your neighborhoods, but it'll be different for each of you, but somewhere around 7% greatest and silent, 43% boomer and Gen X, and 51% millennial, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. Those are the ones that are being born right now. So our question right now, and we can just pop into groups for a couple of minutes, because this we have one question. So how has creating an online worship presence changed the makeup of your congregation? Steve will be randomly assigning you to groups.
If you or Ken get assigned, just don't accept it and I'll reassign those people to another room.
I was invited to room 4, so they'll need another partner.
That's done. Ken, you are in room 5. Nobody's in room 5, so you don't need to go.
Okay.
We have all these other people, though, who aren't in rooms.
Well, maybe we should just ask them.
Well, there are people who I got private messages from, they don't have audio or they don't have video. So I'm having to move people around to other rooms.
All right. Ken, a couple of people mentioned they didn't get the link to the presentation from the last one.
Oh.
Maybe we can resend that.
Yep.
As well. Okay.
If any of you are still with us in the main group and you want to talk with us about how creating online worship presence has changed the makeup of your community, please feel free. Or I won't say forever hold your peace, but
So I ended up in a breakout room by myself and I got reassigned, but I don't know how to get there.
Steve will help you with that.
Thank you.
All right, Dorothy.
I've been thinking about it though.
All right, good.
that's the first step.
So Dorothy, why don't we just chat here?
Okay, so I think what's happened to our congregation is that the older people, the silent generation, just doesn't participate really. They start kind of, I think, find the technology too challenging, or they don't have, anyway, they don't seem to be attending. We have, though, gained a few shut-ins, that's true. And we did maintain our Sunday school, which was nice. And I don't know that we've had any new people join, you know. We do a Zoom meeting though. You have to get in touch with the priest in order to be on the list. We aren't streaming.
Mm. That is a choice that people have been having to make about whether they want to have open Zoom or closed Zoom.
Yeah. How does the other work? How is it working for people?
Well, early on, people were very afraid of having Zoom bombing, but that's kind of gone by the wayside now.
Control.
Everybody's got their jollies from doing that. And Zoom has
School kids.
so so those who leave it open tend to get more people from outside their congregation.
That's something we should think about then.
Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat they've been getting people from all around the world participating in their online service.
Yep.
I think as long as you have someone monitoring, you know, who's in charge of monitoring everything, that way if you do get somebody, you can just kick them out, you know, if it's not what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Then
You mean the host who has control over those things?
Yeah. One person says that they have a standard operating procedure just like that now. They kick them out and then they pray for them.
Yeah.
Our challenge has been the opposite. Our online has been so successful, and we stream 7 services a week. We have participants from all around the world. It's so popular now. Now that the church is reopened, we're having trouble getting people come back in person.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrific.
So a real dilemma that we have right now is whether we have been somewhat neutral in trying to encourage people to come back. We talk about all of our safety procedures. We are the safest place in town. I mean, we are as safe as being in a hospital, really. But do we promote that aggressively to try to get people to come back? But, you know, we have a lot of older members with health conditions who really are safer at home. So it just is kind of a fine line about how aggressively we promote the safe environment at church.
Where are you?
We're in Stuart, Florida, east coast of Florida.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and that's a good segue into what we'll be talking about when we get back.
Great, thanks.
But I would also mention that the person who made the comment about not getting many people from the greatest generation, in the congregation of which I'm a member, one of the most technically savvy people is 95 years old. And she's taken all of the other old folks, as she calls them, old farts, she calls them, 65 or older, and is teaching them how to use Zoom.
That's great.
For her grandchildren all the time.
Nice. Yes.
Should we be bringing people back?
They're back.
Back.
They're back. All right. Well, let's segue into what might change if you went back to the way it was. So a couple of questions here. We're using our tool, which is called Mapdash for Faith Communities, which is a tool that allows you to interactively look at various aspects of your neighborhood and the people who live there. So what we're looking at here is a social vulnerability index. And so people who are in these neighborhoods that are high socially vulnerable populations, African Americans, Latinos, people with disabilities, pre-existing conditions, that sort of thing, are more concentrated here. You're unlikely to see members, and these are member households from a church plotted over this. You're unlikely to see these households coming back until everything is totally over. Those in nursing homes. So those people in this area who are in nursing homes, you're not going to see them because they're not going to come to your church. They'll do it if that's the place where they live. That's their center of community, is the nursing home or supported living facility where they live. And if you go back, you're going to lose them if you go back to the way it was. 65 or older, because they are at high risk as a group, and this shows where we have a pretty high number of those. These particular households that fall in that area, they're probably not going to get back into church until there's a vaccine. Millennials and Gen Zs, they're not as thrilled with church buildings as we are. Their church is making the world a better place for a lot of them. And so those people, if you go back to just in-person worship, you will likely lose most of them. So let's flip the coin and talk about what you might gain by continuing online activities. So research suggests that one of those things would be congregational growth, that online church is part of a process that kind of can lead people to increased commitment and engagement over time. So you might be able to bring people into the community in a way that's kind of more comfortable for them, not an immediate culture shock. Expanded ministries. Looking at the research, these 5 ministries have been the most likely to be offered online by a majority of churches. Prayer, online, giving opportunities, pastoral care, serving opportunities, and online groups. Now, I'd just like you to think about this and hold on to this question until we get to the final question and answer period, but be thinking about these questions and how you might answer them. So what would your gains and losses be if you leaned into being a hybrid congregation? And what would your gains and losses be from going back to the way it was pre-COVID? So just be thinking about that. Because there are gains and losses either way. And of course, find out what innovations others are trying and steal creatively. I forgot to change that, Mary and Steve. They suggested borrow. But I think that when you steal something creatively, they still have it. You just have it too. Some ways to do that, the Episcopal Health Foundation and the Episcopal Asset Map Project, they've joined forces and are inviting congregations to share their ministry resources and experiences. So you'll find stories about what people are doing on the Episcopal Asset Map, and you'll have a link to this. We at FaithX have started a group called the New Paradigms Working Group, where we're convening monthly to explore what the new normal or normals might be. But just ask around because everybody's experimenting. Some people might be trying something that you haven't, and you can learn from them. So you remember I mentioned earlier that you have to get back to the why to make this work. If you're going to be leaning into this hybrid space and being a hybrid congregation, you have to get back to the why. You know, as Jesus said, you can't put old wines in new wineskins. You can't tweak your way out of this. What you have to do is to discover your congregation's purpose and its passion, and then rebuild from there, recreate from there, and experiment like crazy. So what does that look like? We call it vision-guided experimentation, exploring new what's in service of the why. So once you've gotten clearer on your why, your reason you exist, the reason you're there, what your vision, what your mission is, and that may take some time, and it may be an unfolding process, then you can begin to adapt what you're doing or what you're finding other people are doing, because you can't just import something lock, stock, and barrel from someplace else. Adapt it to what your situation is, what you know about your community and your congregation. Apply it, assess it, and then either toss it, fail quickly so you can try something else, or if it looks like it's working, try and tweak it to make it better, and then do it again, PRN, as needed. What you'll find is this is a very, very creative process if you don't get too stuck in trying to make old ways work. In my former congregation, we like to call this rapid iterative prototyping, because that's spelled RIP, initials for that, because we always wanted to remind ourselves that it's a good idea to let bad ideas die. So just like that other question that I asked you a few minutes ago, about the things you'll gain and the things you'll lose each way, there's a way that you can look at this, because you're balancing two things when you're talking about what to do online and what to do in person. Because the two things are relational significance, how important it is for you to have that physical connection, and the ease of putting it online. So if it's something that's low relational significance and easier to put online, then put it online by all means. If it's high relational significance and harder to put online, obviously that's a clear way to find a safe way to do that in person. That's a clear indication you need to do that. If it's easier to put online, if it's harder to put online, but there's low relational significance, maybe you don't do it. And here's the judgment call over here. If it's high relational significance and the ease of putting online is harder, then you're going to have to make a judgment call. Now, I've spoken to different people about this, and these different things, they put in different areas on that, because it might differ from congregation to congregation. But you have things like announcements, communion, sermon delivery, giving, getting a feeling response to the sermon, hearing the congregation sing, hearing the musicians sing, having a pastoral presence, having spontaneous meetings, like those parking lot conversations. So what would you put where would be the food for thought in this? And so be thinking about where these would fall in your congregation and what that would say to you about what you need to do online and what you need to do in person. Because it's never going to be an either or from here on out. So what about giving? Is the sky falling? It was seeming for a while like everybody was feeling that way, but not really. Research from Givelify is that donations have actually remained consistent through the pandemic. 55% of parishioners, of congregants, are giving the same or increased, and only 2% are giving less online and mobile than they were before. And some other interesting facts that they found about this was that congregations who leaned into digital grew their donations. That if you had a 27%, those that tended to lean in and grow had a 27% higher web presence that was drawing people in. Those that had multiple ways to give online had 5 times higher giving. And overall, those who really leaned in and actually made giving the liturgical part of the service, say, this is our offertory, now take out your phone and we'll play some offertory music while you do your giving. Those congregations have seen a 10% increase in giving per household. And a few other things, like during and after the pandemic, the way people are thinking about that is most people during the pandemic have been increasing their giving to multiple congregations. So if you have an online presence, there's a possibility that somebody that goes to another congregation might see something they want to support and support it in your congregation. Of course, it could go the other way too. 93% now give primarily online, and 92% have said that they will continue to give online when the pandemic is over. Now that's an interesting thing, because we tend to think that we need to get back to the way it was so that people would resume the giving the way they were before. But this actually says something different, that maintaining an online presence is actually going to be a good thing for us in terms of giving. So thinking through the pathway to a new paradigm, what do you do? How do you get there? How do you walk your way through the path from going from what are we doing, what did we do then, to how do we do it now? So you start then by actually thinking through what you used to do, what was the normal, and getting clear on what that was, and how you did it then, and what that was. But then try and get behind that to the why you did it that way then. And then as you've deepened your way into that and kind of plumbed the depths of that, then you can start back up again. You can begin to ask, well, how has that why changed, if at all? Why are you gathering people together now? Why are you doing Sunday school? Why are you doing worship? Why are you doing why are you doing formation? All of those things. Think through why you're doing it, and also think through, in terms of the why, what is the passion or the calling of your organization to do? And then you can, from that point of clarity, you can begin to think through what can you do now in terms of new strategies to achieve the new why. And then from that, you can think through how you do it. But again, it's not necessarily a linear path. This is something that you'll be having to do over and over again. Now that's what it looks like in terms of the path, in terms of kind of going deeper into why you're there and then coming back out again. Here is a worksheet where you can do this. We're going to actually give you a link to an actual worksheet that has these on it. But starting with, what were you doing before? How are you doing it before? Why did you do it before? Why does God want you to do something in this new context? What does this new context call you to do now? And how does this new context call you to do it now? So now we're moving into our final Q&A and discussion, and we're going to do this in a large group this time. And you can feel free to share with the group some of your responses to those food for thought questions. Then after that, we'll give you a little bit more information about resources and then send you on your way. And
one of the participants was asking if you could revisit that piece on the relational significance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Versus ease and effort.
Yeah.
So when you talk about relationship significance, what do you mean by that term?
Relationship basically meaning physical presence. Mm-hmm. Although it's not, it's not that 100%, but the sense of physical presence. So it's relationship significance in pastoral care. Could be, if you did one-on-one in Zoom, it could perhaps provide that kind of presence and personal attention that you're getting. But that's the sense of it is that how does it require that kind of individualized personal presence or presence within the group?
Right. So like a congregation who's trying to figure out how to do baptisms. Mm-hmm. Has high relationship significance, and it's hard to do online. Mm-hmm. So you need to find the safe way to do it in person.
That's correct. But announcements can be done very easily.
Great. All right, I think we answered that question.
Right, so we're going to open up the floor for questions or discussion at this point.
You can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and join in for comments or questions.
And let me put it out this way: that question that we posed before, what are your gains and losses going to be from leaning in to the new hybrid kind of space? And what would be your gains and losses from going back to the way it was?
So here's a question in the chat. How do you help your people move from the then to the now?
Well, I think in part that's involving them in that process. That I think it's easier for people to move to a new what when they've gotten in touch with the new why. So if you involve them in the process of getting there, that's going to help. Another thing that we found tends to help people is to specifically label what you're doing as an experiment. People are often willing to experiment who, if you ask them to change, would say no. So those are two things that I can offer.
So a question about online platforms, what people are using. Are there things besides Zoom or Facebook? I've certainly, gosh, there's one I just heard about that was highly recommended by Jeremy Tackett at the Episcopal Church. And the name of it's gone out of my head. But let's see. Do we have information about generational giving?
Yes, that we can provide that. It'd be easier to do post. If any of the questions that you have require getting you some additional information, we can easily provide that.
And then, let's see, what else? Do we have any data to understand the number of churches that will close within the next few months? Recent calculations of restaurants in Wisconsin was 33% won't make it past January. Many churches won't be able to sustain this either.
Yes, I actually just before this this webinar, I was looking online for that exact issue, and people are thinking that as much as 20 to 30% of congregations will close before the pandemic is over. And there are already ones that are making the decision that they're not going to reopen, or that they're going to merge with other congregations. And some of that has happened organically. They've begun to worship together as congregations during this time. And then they're saying, why should we go back to separate churches now? And when you think about it, as they begin to think that through, one of the plus sides of that they're seeing is that they've begun to realize how much of a drag on mission that their buildings are, and that they believe that without their buildings, that they'll actually be able to do more outreach and achieve more of their mission without having to put so much of their attention and resources into maintaining their buildings. So it's not all bad.
Any creative solutions to the lack of choir and congregational singing?
Oh, yes. At the church that I go to, which is Ascension Episcopal Church in Gaithersburg, they're using this new approach that's I don't remember the exact technical term for it, but it's digital choir basically. And what they do is the choir director has to get a little bit of self-taught training in how to do video editing. But then what he does is he sends out a recording of the song, the hymn that's going to be sung, and then lets people listen in their own earphones while they sing to their phone. And then when that's all done, they sync all those up together. And so you have a virtual choir. We just did it for the first time last Sunday. I happen to know this because I'm in the choir.
And how did it work?
It worked really well.
The product was good?
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing my piece, I probably recorded it 20 times because I thought each time that it was terrible. But at some point I just realized that it was just getting worse. And so I just said, I'm going to stop now. But when you put it together in a choir, a lot of those other voices kind of fill in around you, like it does in a real choir when somebody's breathing when they're not supposed to, or coughing, that the other people around them fill in. And so, and you have an opportunity to kind of adjust the audio, get some static out. And so it's a very interesting way to do it. They're planning to, for sure, to do it on Christmas Eve service because they feel like they're not going to be back in the building by then. And so they're going to be having their carol singing done that way. So we're going to record a bunch of carols and sync them together and then let people sing along with us in their homes, but it'll feel more like it's a real choir and a real congregational singing. So that's just one way that people have done it.
So a couple of people have asked, Ken, if you could give a more concrete example of the then and now cycle. Could you maybe take that with a specific ministry or?
Sure. Well, let's walk our way through.
Great.
Well, probably the easiest thing to think through, since we've all kind of gone through it, is what were you doing before, and do that with worship. So what were you doing before? You were gathering together at church. You were singing together. You had a choir. You were able to sit next to your friends. How were you doing it? I actually kind of crossed the boundary into that as I was talking about the what. But most people were had their own what we call it. What do we call it? Way of doing things in the congregation. Our bishop called it something once that I can't remember. But customary. Everybody has their own customary. But we think that that's the way it's always been, but we don't realize that we built up that customary based on the needs of our congregation, or at least maybe the way our congregation was 20 years ago, and we just haven't changed it yet. But then why do we do it before? People, you're not worshiping because you want to be in worship. You're worshiping because you want to get closer to God. You're worshiping because you want to get more connected, to each other. You're worshiping to get spiritual food and to be equipped so that you can go back into the world and change the world. So then what you do is switch from that to say, well, why does God want us to do something in this new context? Because God may not be asking you things for the same reason as before. It may be, but it's good to ask that question. So what are you feeling called to do now? Are you feeling called to use outreach, to use worship, online worship as an evangelism opportunity? And if so, that might, the what for that might be going online for worship with Zoom, and doing it with an open Zoom as opposed to a closed and secured Zoom, so that more people could get in from the outside. If your why is more to hold your congregation together, you might not want to do open Zoom. And there might be other things that you learn as you do that, that will modify the what of what you're doing and the how of what you're doing it. If your congregation, for example, if your congregation's reason for being together is to be really moved with well done worship and well done singing, then you might choose, instead of as your how, you might choose not to do in-person, live Zoom, but you might want to pre-record it. But if your people are really after connection, then you probably want to have an open and interactive Zoom situation. Does that help in terms of thinking your way through this?
Yeah, we can continue to talk about that. I'm conscious of the time, Ken, so we should probably wrap up here. And we can stay on for a few moments for people who have other questions.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of things here in the chat about the choir and the software, so please take a look at that. A few people have posted the names of the kinds of software that would help you do those things.
All right. So just a little bit about us, if you want to engage with us. Our whole vision and mission is to help congregations survive and thrive in turbulent times. We created that mission statement 3 years ago without knowing how turbulent these times are going to be. So here are the ways you can get to us. Our website is faithx.net. You can get more info by emailing us at info@faithx.net. Resources, we have and are continuing to bring together additional COVID-related resources. You can get that at bit.ly/faithx-resources. You can find out more about our services at bit.ly/faithx-services. And you can subscribe to our online newsletter at bit.ly/faithx.-subscribe. That is it, and we can stay behind to answer questions that anybody may wish to engage us on.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. We'll be back in October with another webinar, if not sooner. So we're in conversation right now with the public health experts to talk about the current situation with COVID. And then in October, Steve, what's the title of your webinar in October? Where's Steve?
You might have jumped ship already.
Might have jumped ship already. That's okay. So it's about kind of a what next type of thing.
Finding your post-COVID calling.
There you go. There will be a post-COVID time. So
It may be a while.
yeah, we'll be sending you information on our next webinars. So
thank you.
You're welcome, Sarah. Thanks for being here.
And feel free to reach out to us in between.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So I am potentially one of the few Baptists on this call. We are a progressive Baptist church in the South, which sometimes sounds like the biggest oxymoron, but I'm grateful that it's the oxymoron I live in. So I'm one of our associates, and so my official title is Minister of Children and Community Life. Mm-hmm. So the children's piece is pretty self-explanatory, birth through 5th grade. The community life piece is working with guests and new members, small groups, et cetera. And so I know you're going to send us the worksheet, but I did do a quick capture of that last slide with the worksheet, because I want to send it to my ministry chair, because what I'm experiencing a lot of challenge with, which is why I asked the question of how to bring the people along, is our longer time members they can't imagine that we will not be back to normal, that, we won't just be jumping right back in. And so I'm just wondering my common sense tells me that newer church members who have not lived into the tradition that they're becoming a part of don't have any of that. I mean, we have people who have joined our church during the pandemic and they've literally never been on our campus. It's the strangest thing in the world. So as I'm working with both groups, I would love some really good insight. I mean, I hear the bringing them on the why, and I love that. And, but it's, big ships turn slowly. And, I want to be as prepared as possible to try and help them understand there is little to no going back.
Yes.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yes. Part of it, I think, is just acknowledging where they are. I mean, we've even found this in our webinars that we've been doing with clergy. In the first several webinars we did, every question boiled down to, when can we go back to the way it was? I knew how to do something then. Now I'm not so sure I know how to do this anymore. And so when we started talking about a hybrid kind of way of moving forward, we had to start with, okay, we know you want to get back in the church someday. So do we. But we want to do it safely. And we actually did this in our congregation, which has a lot of older people in it. And we looked at all the losses and gains. We said, how many people do you know that are on this, that are on these online worship sessions that we're doing together? And people would say, oh yeah. Which one of them do you really like? Have you made friends with them? Yeah, they could name 2 or 3 people that they've been chatting with. Some of them have had family members that are coming, or family members that live in a nursing home in the area that are now coming. And when we realize that, when we begin to take the downside of moving quickly back to the way it was, then what are our losses? We're not going to be able to see those people because some of them don't live in this area. Some of them can't get to church. And then what do we have to do it safely? Well, our congregation has a membership of 500 and an average Sunday attendance pre-COVID of about 200. Theoretically, we could get up to 50 people in there in phase 2, but when we did the math and actually put it out geometrically, that really safely we could only have 15. And so what does that do in terms of making the church exclusive?
Right.
And not to mention the time, the effort to accommodate that indoor worship for so few people.
Right.
Is that a good use of the resources of the church?
Yeah, and we did that math too with Javier, the rector at Ascension Gaithersburg. And we realized that to get everybody through, he'd have to do like 10 different worship, in-person worship sessions each day. I mean, on a Sunday, or spread them throughout the week. And then we just said, do you want to make Javier do that? And everybody said, no, that's crazy. So,
because that might be safe for any individual attending, and the potential for it not to be safe for Javier is great. That super increases his risk.
And the way that our diocese is requiring us to do this is people have to reserve a space for worship. Do we want to do that? How does that feel to know that if you're the 15th, the 16th person in line, you're out?
That's right.
You can't bring a friend at the last minute. You just can't.
Or someone just walked in and you'd have to say, oh, sorry, we can't accommodate you.
Right, right.
So steering.
Paul, do you have a question?
Yes, this is about neighborhood missional intelligence report. Can you say a little bit, or Mary, either of you?
Well, this is something that we've developed over time. The tool that we use called MapDash for Faith Communities has just a wealth of interactive data. Everything from what the population looks like to what the issues are, what the trends are in the community. And it's a lot for people to go over in a short time. And we use that in longer sessions with people and with dioceses as they're doing what we call strategic missional planning. But what we found is that we needed a way to consolidate just the critical information in one place. And so what we do in a neighborhood missional report is we provide two-page reports, and they're interactive infographic reports. So one is a 15-minute drive time report, which research says that is your membership area, and we do a 5-minute drive time report, which research says that's your ministry area. That's the area you're most responsible for. And those are often different. And then within that, there are 40 pieces of demographic informations and trends that we know are going to be useful for you in this. And each one of those you can click on. It has a summary at face value, but you can go behind it and click on it and bring up another a deeper pop-up that goes deeper into that. So that's what that does, and it's something that we've been developing over time, over 2 or 3 iterations, as we get feedback from people about what it is they want and need, and what it is they don't.
And it's available to individual congregations. We can just provide a report. We can provide a report with a little bit of explanation, or we can do a couple of hours consultation around it, helping you interpret the report.
Right.
And just make some choices about what to do with that information.
Or we can do what we call a missional intelligence assessment, a neighborhood missional assessment, in which we spend like 4 hours of consultation, starting with that report, but bringing in other information to bear. And then people walk away from that 4 hours over several sessions, that assessment with a real clear idea about what the missional opportunities and challenges are in their neighborhood, and a sense of their priorities around engaging those challenges and opportunities.
Wow, wonderful. Our congregation is in Newark Diocese, and we are almost closer to Pennsylvania and Connecticut and New York border. Ours is the last one in the diocese, geographically speaking. But then, so when you say demographic information, that's integrated with the government data of population, right?
That's correct. We actually get it from a variety of sources. A lot of it is from census and census updates. But
Okay.
we also consolidate data from a lot of other places. Like our best data that we get on the locations of churches is from the Department of Homeland Security, of all places. And we get stuff from HUD, and we get stuff from Health and Human Services, Department of Education. We get stuff about police shootings and redlining, and a lot of different things that we can pull together in that.
So will I be able to read more on the pricing as such online with your website,
Yes.
FaithX?
Yes, indeed. It's
If you drop us an email, we can send you a price sheet.
Okay, I will do that. And I think to the same info@faithx.net email. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. We'll stay in touch.
Sure.
But just so you know that we do have, we have solutions as low as $200.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's encouraging. We're a small congregation trying to, they just got me into the ministry from last year. And then as soon as I jumped in, COVID came in, and then now we are, as everybody else, trying to, figure out where are we from here to go.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I think we're going to have to send you on your way. Ken and I have other appointments this afternoon, but we appreciate you being here and hope that you'll join us in October for our next offering. So
thank you very, very much.
so much.
It
Thank you
feels
very
good
much.
to know you're not alone.
No,
You're definitely not alone. That's right.
Thank you.
at the very
Thank
least.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually thinking it would have been nice if I had the time to have actually walked them through that, those steps.
Yeah, and
I
it
did,
would have been good to have taken something other than worship.
yeah, that was just right off the top of my head.
No, but like, okay, say that you have a free agape, you have an agape meal for the community every week. What does that look like now?
Right.
Why did you do it? Why would you do it now? Why is it important now? It's really important now, but you have to do it differently.
Yeah.
So
More outreach.
yeah, right. Sunday school, like all sorts of those different areas that people are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But I'll say, we had 52 people who paid. I think we got up to 46 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of positive feedback in the chat.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah. So, and I think it's also encouraging when people stay on with their questions. There were more questions in the chat than we could get to, and some that I just didn't want to delve into.
Yeah, right.
That's not why we're here.
Yeah.
So.
And I think this will give me the chat.
It should.
Yeah, it should give me the host should have reverted to me, so it should save on my computer. And I'll look that over. And what I usually do is in the first follow-up email when we send them the video to send, and also the worksheet and whatnot, that we also send them links to future webinars, but
Right.
also maybe answer some of the questions or give them links to some of the questions that they ask.
If it's worth it. I feel like we covered the main points.
Yeah, I think we did.
And some people just want you to tell them exactly what to do.
Right.
And you can't do that.
Yeah.
No,
No,
you give the framework for thinking about it, and that's the important piece.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how'd it feel for you?
It felt pretty good. I always think that I could do better.
Well, of course, we all do.
Yeah. And I feel like if I had it to do over again, there are some things I would change and some things I could improve on. But I always underestimate how useful what we're doing is going to be to them, and how grateful they feel about it. Because there's just a lot of good feedback on this.
Yes, there really is. So, and people like looking forward to October and that sort of thing. So,
Right.
good. No, I thought it went very well. That would be my one piece of feedback is, to spend more time on that loop and with a specific example.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not worship.
Yeah. So do you think we should run this again at some point?
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
Not right away, but probably could. And I'm not sure what Steve's planning for his, but I think it's really helpful when we highlight our products.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the other place, like you put the neighborhood missional intelligence report in there, but you kind of zoomed past it and didn't spend a lot of time on it. So we always want to
What I figure what I could do is just do a sample of one and send it to them.
send it to them. Yeah.
Say, you know, this is what this is. Play with it. Give them a sample, not theirs. You know,
Right.
that's actually in dynamic HTML.
Right. Yep, that'd be good. And then a couple people said they didn't get the data story from the last one. So if you resend it, because we're sending them the data story as well as the video, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So they probably have it somewhere, but
Yeah, we sent them a lot of stuff, so but maybe we should send them less.
Well, we don't want to give everything away. So.
But I mean, as long as when I sent it before, I actually said we would appreciate you not sharing this to people not in the webinar. Of course, some people are going to do it anyway, but
Yeah, I know. I've said that to people too.
Yeah.
I think we have to.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way that you could like lock it so that it would only be, or we could stop promising it.
Yeah, that's true.
Say you get the video, but not the slide deck.
Or we could explore if there's a way to do it on YouTube, where it could be by subscription only.
Subscription, yeah. That's possible.
Yeah, so we can explore that.
Right.
I do feel like I have started to feel like maybe by giving this, you know, giving them the actual deck is, you know, maybe we are giving away too much of the store.
Right. Right. Yeah.
There's always that balance.
It is. It is. And if they have the video,
yeah,
why do they need the deck?
Right.
It's essentially the deck.
And they can't edit the deck anyway.
No. No,
So,
they can share it.
And I was figuring if they have the video and they have a worksheet as a takeaway, they don't really need the video. I mean, they don't really need the deck at all.
Right. Right. Well, we did, in this instance, we committed to it already. but moving forward,
yeah,
we'll change our policy on it.
Live and learn.
Yeah.
This is our own rapid iterative
On our own RIP. That's right.
That was a stupid idea. Let's not do that again.
Yes. All right. Well, I need to scoot because I have lunch. Got to eat some lunch before my next meeting. So, all right. See you soon.
Bye.